Hi, my name is Father Charlie Bouchard, and I'm here to help you know about the Sunday Scriptures for the second Sunday in Ordinary Time before you hear them as you celebrate the Eucharist this weekend. You know, the story that we just heard from the Gospel of John, the story of the wedding feast of Cana, is probably one of the most popular and best known in all of the scriptures. Everybody knows the allusion, and sometimes there are even jokes or references to, oh, so you're going to turn water into wine, suggesting that somebody's about to try to do something which is impossible, that they're going to work a miracle. It's right up there with the notion of a Hail Mary pass. Probably not going to happen. And Yet we know from reading the scriptures, especially this Gospel of John, that this was the very first of the signs that Jesus works in the gospel. And we might ask, well, signs of what? Was it a sign that even Jesus liked a glass of good wine from time to time? Was it a sign that he had a bossy mother? Was it a sign that he had a future as a wedding planner? Well, of course, none of these things are true. We know that it was a sign of who Jesus was, a sign that he had the power of God and that he had come in the world as a sign of love and as a sign of God's generosity. And the interesting thing here is that only Jesus' mother really knew who he was and that he was capable of this. And she asked him to do this. Even the guests at the wedding feast did not know where the wine came from. And the disciples saw it happen, and they knew that Jesus did this, but they did not fully understand. It was only the first sign that Jesus was going to give them. But there's another, I think, bigger aspect to this gospel reading today, which is really about the Christian attitude towards scarcity. This idea of scarcity comes up in the scriptures many times, going all the way back to the Old Testament, where we have the story of God providing manna in the desert to the Israelites who were starving, showing that he cared about them and that he would provide for them. There's also the gospel story of the loaves and fishes, and of course the story of this abundance of wine, which appears through Jesus' action. But there are other kinds of scarcity which are not real. They are illusory, and they are created by someone or by someones in order to manipulate people or to frighten them or to get them to do something. The worst kind of this gospel of scarcity, as some people have referred to it, is spiritual scarcity. And that happens when we suggest to people that the church isn't big enough for them, or that there's not a place for them, that you have to be worthy, you have to be all the way in, or there isn't going to be a place. And the people who are excluded from the church are sometimes gays and lesbians, they're sometimes divorced and remarried Catholics, they're sometimes sort of lukewarm Catholics who maybe come to church occasionally, but not all the time. I remember a bishop once giving a homily, and he said, you know, it's okay if people come to church and stand behind the pillars, so to speak, that they are looking, they're seeking an answer, and it's okay if they're not all the way in. We don't have to expel them. There's enough for them, even as seekers. There's even one bishop right now in the United States who has proposed to ban the very popular hymn, All Are Welcome. And he is presumably doing this or trying to do it because he believes that all are not welcome. Now, I don't know who he has in mind, but it seems to me that this is proposing a kind of illusion of scarcity of God's grace, which will keep people away and make the church smaller and holier, as some people say. There are also political aspects to scarcity, many of which are being debated in Congress right now. And while we should be concerned about the spiritual kind, even when it happens in our own church, we have to also, as Christians, be concerned about how we view scarcity from a political perspective. And again, there are real scarcities in the world. If you've seen the news in the last few days, you've seen images of Palestinians in Gaza holding up any container they've got to try to get a spoonful or a ladle full of the limited food there, even when there are trucks lined up outside waiting to get in with tons of food. So we have, in a way, created this scarcity in order to intimidate people. There is enough food, but not for you and not right now. There's also the question of health care in the United States. Congress is debating reducing reimbursement for Medicare and Medicaid, and I've heard people complain that they don't want their tax dollars to go to people who haven't earned a right to health care. And yet healthcare is something that's commonly held, and we have plenty of it in this country. We spend more than twice as much as any other industrialized country on healthcare, and yet there are many people who don't even have a family doctor and can't even get regular preventive care. We're saying to them, in effect, there's enough for me, but not for you. Again, this is an illusory scarcity. There is enough. Or look at the very painful issue of immigration. We're trying to limit immigration, and the argument is often, well, our tax dollars shouldn't be paying for these foreigners, or they haven't earned a right to live in this country, or to have a decent wage, or to be free from the threat of violence. And we're saying to them also, there isn't enough for you here. It's America first, or we might translate it into me first, and, well, whatever happens to others, it doesn't matter. As you know, Cardinal McElroy, who recently became Archbishop of Washington, D.C., said that mass deportation is contradictory to Catholic doctrine, that we believe that God will provide, we believe that there is enough, and of course we have to control our borders, but we also have to remember that everything that we have came from God, comes from God. We can allocate it, distribute it, but we have to do so equitably. So I think the main message of this gospel today, as Jesus eliminated the problem of scarcity at the wedding feast of Cana, he was essentially saying to them, don't worry, there's enough for everybody. And there was. We have to reject this gospel of scarcity. We have to reject these illusions of scarcity that are created for political or sometimes ecclesial purposes. We have to fundamentally believe that God wants to provide for us, and that if we cooperate, God's not going to do it all on God's own. We have to be part of this process of eliminating scarcity in the world, eliminating scarcity of grace, eliminating scarcity of food, housing, good wages, and all the other things that people need. So let us take this gospel today as an inspiration to help us think about the various kinds of scarcity that people propose, why they do it, and how we can challenge their assumptions.